They said it would never happen. For over 3 decades, fans begged for a sequel, but Hollywood stayed silent. No answers, no updates, just whispers, rumors, and a lingering question that refused to fade. What happened to Vivian and Edward after the fairy tale ended? Did they ride off into the sunset, or did real life catch up to them? Now, out of nowhere, the story we thought was over has returned. Julia Roberts and Richard Gere are stepping back into the roles that defined a generation. And this time, it's not a dream, not a reboot, and definitely not just nostalgia. Pretty Woman 2 is real, and the story might just break your heart. When Pretty Woman first lit up movie screens in 1990, no one expected it to become a global phenomenon. It was supposed to be a small romantic comedy, nothing more. But instead, it became something else entirely. A love story that was never supposed to happen. A chance meeting between a wealthy businessman and a woman from the streets. Two people from completely different worlds who weren't meant to fall in love. And yet they did. On screen and in the hearts of millions. Julia Roberts, with her infectious laugh and unforgettable red dress, became America's sweetheart overnight. Richard Gere, reserved but magnetic, played Edward Lewis, the man who thought he had everything until he met someone who made him question everything. The chemistry between them wasn't just acting. It was something raw, something real. You could feel it. And when Edward stood on top of that limo, holding flowers and climbing the fire escape to rescue Vivian, it didn't just feel like a happy ending. It felt like a promise, the kind that makes people believe in love again. But as the credits rolled and audiences wiped their tears, a quiet question remained. What happened next? That question never went away. In fact, it grew louder with time. Fans wanted answers. Did Vivian and Edward stay together? Did their love survive outside the fantasy of Beverly Hills? Or was it just one magical week that would never happen again? For years, Hollywood ignored those questions. And so did the stars. Julia Roberts went on to become one of the biggest names in Hollywood. Richard Gere followed his own path, choosing roles with depth and meaning. And Pretty Woman? It remained frozen in time. A perfect love story no one dared to touch. Until now. It all started quietly. A few reruns during the 2020 lockdown brought the film back into the spotlight. But this time, it wasn't just nostalgic fans tuning in, it was a new generation discovering Vivian Ward for the first time. Social media lit up, fan theories resurfaced, tributes, re-edits, interviews, all pointing to one burning desire: closure. People didn't just want a sequel for the sake of it. They wanted to know, did the fairy tale survive the real world? The more time passed, the more the question grew into something deeper. Because Pretty Woman was never just about a romance. It was about change, transformation, the kind that comes from love, but also from pain. The idea that no matter where you come from, your story can still have a happy ending. That's why, when the first whispers of a sequel began again, real ones this time, it didn't feel like a marketing stunt. It felt like something long overdue. Not just a continuation, but a completion. And then it happened. Julia Roberts confirmed it herself in an interview. "If the story is right," she said softly, "I'll be there." And that was all it took. The floodgates opened. The studio gave the green light. Richard Gere signed on. The original creative team was consulted. Writers, directors, costume designers, everyone started coming back. And just like that, after more than 30 years, Pretty Woman 2 was officially in motion. But this isn't just a sequel. It's not about reusing old lines or copying what worked before. No, this is a completely new chapter, one built on time, on loss, on growth. Because the new film doesn't start with love. It starts with silence, with a distance that has grown between two people who once meant everything to each other. Years have passed, life has moved on, Vivian and Edward have changed, and they haven't spoken in a very, very long time. Why? That's the question the sequel dares to ask. We're told that Edward, now a retired business icon, lives far from the rush of New York and Wall Street. He's traded the corporate world for a quieter life, but not necessarily a happier one. Vivian, on the other hand, used the past as fuel. She became a counselor, an advocate for women walking the same streets she once did. She didn't wait to be saved again. She saved herself. She built something powerful, something real. And yet, something's missing. Pretty Woman 2 doesn't just pick up where we left off. It explores what happens when people let time pull them apart. When love is left unfinished. When you never get to say what you really meant. There's a heaviness to it, a truth that feels deeper than before. But with that weight comes something else. Hope. Because in the middle of all that silence, something unexpected happens. Their paths cross again. No one knows exactly how. The production team has kept it a closely guarded secret. Was it fate? A funeral? A letter sent too late? Whatever it is, it forces them to look at everything they once had, and everything they lost. The story begins not with a limo or a red dress, but with regret. And from there, something beautiful begins to bloom again. But can love that was once lost truly be found again? That's the journey Pretty Woman 2 invites us on. And if early rumors are true, this won't be just another romantic film. It will be something richer, something that looks love in the face, not through rose-colored glasses, but with age, with scars, with the wisdom that only comes from time and heartbreak. And through it all, one thing becomes clear. This story never really ended. It was just waiting for the right moment to begin again. Time is a funny thing. It can heal wounds, or bury them so deep you forget they ever existed. For Vivian and Edward, time did both. In the years after their week in Beverly Hills, they didn't fall apart in some dramatic explosion. There was no fight, no betrayal, no scandal. There was just silence. A phone call missed, a letter never written, promises made in the glow of a fairy tale that slowly faded under the harsh light of real life. They each went their separate ways, not because the love wasn't real, but because neither of them knew how to carry it into the world they lived in. Edward returned to his high-rise offices and billion-dollar deals. On the outside, he was still the man in the sharp suit, confident, composed, completely in control. But something inside him was different. He wasn't the same man who had walked into that hotel room with a suitcase full of rules. Vivian had changed him. She'd opened something in him that he didn't know how to close. For years, he tried to move forward, tried to date, to fall in love again, but it never felt the same. No one challenged him the way she did. No one laughed the way she laughed. And no matter how successful he became, a part of him always felt unfinished. Vivian, too, carried the weight of that week. But she didn't let it define her. In fact, she used it as fuel. That one week, the moment her life shifted, became the catalyst for everything that followed. She left Los Angeles, got her degree, became a voice for women who didn't have one. She started a foundation, helped hundreds of girls get off the streets, built shelters, fought city policies. She became the kind of woman other women looked up to. The kind of woman she never thought she could be. But behind the speeches and interviews, there was a part of her that still remembered the way Edward looked at her, the way he believed in her when no one else had. He hadn't just hired her, he'd seen her, and that kind of seeing never disappears. Even after all these years, she could still close her eyes and feel his hand reaching for hers on that fire escape. But life doesn't wait for fairy tales. Vivian got married once, a short, messy marriage that ended quietly. No one ever compared to Edward, not really. Then everything changed with a single letter. The sequel never confirms who sent it first. Was it Vivian, finally ready to ask the questions she'd buried? Or Edward, haunted by dreams he couldn't shake? All we know is that the letter existed, and it led to one meeting. One moment neither of them saw coming. They met in New York, not in a luxury suite or a grand ballroom, but in a small cafe tucked away from the chaos. No press, no limos, just two people who used to mean everything to each other, trying to remember what it felt like to speak without pretending. And it wasn't easy. Years had passed. Words didn't come quickly. Vivian had changed. So had Edward. The sparkle, the humor, it was still there, but buried beneath years of silence and questions. Why didn't you call? Why didn't we try? Were we ever meant to last? The script doesn't answer these questions right away. Instead, it lets them linger, like old ghosts sitting between coffee cups and polite smiles. But the tension is unmistakable. And under that tension, something begins to stir. Because the truth is, they never stopped caring. That becomes clear as they continue to talk. They don't discuss the past like a mistake. They talk about it like a missed opportunity. Not with anger, but with sorrow. They remember the highs, the jokes, the awkward moments, and slowly, the wall between them begins to crack. Edward tells her about his father's death, about how it made him step back from the empire he built, how he started questioning everything. Vivian listens, then shares her own story, her struggles, her wins, her heartbreaks, and for the first time in years, they see each other again, not as the people they once were, but as who they've become. Older, wiser, wounded, stronger. And then comes the twist. Edward isn't just in New York by coincidence. He's facing something he never expected, an illness. Not life-threatening, but serious enough to shake him. And suddenly, the man who once controlled everything finds himself standing on uncertain ground. He admits he's scared, that he doesn't want to face it alone. Vivian doesn't respond right away. Her eyes search his. She's not the girl who needed saving anymore. She's not someone who jumps just because he asks. But she's also not made of stone. She still feels the pull, that quiet hum in her chest when he's near. And in that moment, she realizes something. The story they started wasn't over. It was paused. Maybe now. It's time to finish it. But nothing comes easy. Their worlds are still different. Their lives are full of responsibilities. And just when it seems like the door to a second chance is opening, someone else walks in. A woman, younger, sharp, ambitious. She knows Edward. She works with him on a charity board. And she has feelings. Strong ones. The kind that make her see Vivian not as a romantic reunion, but as a threat. And suddenly, what started as a quiet reconnection becomes something more complicated. Because love isn't just about chemistry. It's about timing. And timing hasn't always been kind to Vivian and Edward. As production notes hint, this third party won't be the usual romantic rival cliché. She'll be layered, complex, someone who genuinely cares about Edward, and that makes things harder. Because for the first time, Vivian has to decide, is she here to reclaim what was hers, or to finally let go? Meanwhile, Edward is caught in his own storm, torn between the comfort of the present and the echo of the past. And just when he begins to choose, another secret is revealed. Vivian has a daughter, not Edward's, but a young woman in her 20s, full of fire and ambition. A girl who never knew about the man who once changed her mother's life. And when she finds out, everything shifts. Because this story isn't just about love anymore. It's about legacy, about the choices we make and the ones we don't. As filming continues, early viewers of the rough cut say the emotional weight of these scenes is unforgettable. The sequel doesn't try to recreate the charm of the original. Instead, it builds on it, adding years, heartbreak, and second chances. It's still a romance, but it's grown up, more honest, more raw, and more real. Pretty Woman 2 asks a bold question. Can love lost in youth be reclaimed in age? Or are some fairy tales meant to stay in the past? As Vivian and Edward stand on the edge of that answer, we're left holding our breath. Because sometimes, the hardest part of love isn't falling into it. It's finding the courage to begin again. Vivian never planned to fall for him again. Not really. She told herself she was just curious, just wanted to see if the past still meant anything. But the moment she saw Edward in that cafe, older and slower, but still with that same guarded warmth in his eyes, something inside her shifted. And when he said her name, just her name, it was like time folded in on itself. The years, the distance, the pain, they didn't disappear, but they stopped being walls. They became doors. But love that gets a second chance is never simple. And what Vivian and Edward are stepping into now is far more fragile than what they had all those years ago. This time, they know what's at stake. Vivian's daughter, Lily, is the first complication. At 24, she's everything Vivian once was, only more educated, more guarded, and fiercely independent. Raised without knowing her biological father, Lily had always wondered who shaped her mother's fire, and now she's starting to connect the dots. At first, she's curious about Edward. She knows the name. Who doesn't? He's a legend in finance, a man who's written about in leadership books and quoted in business schools. But when she finds out he's not just a former client of her mother's charity, but the Edward, the one from that week, something cracks in her. Lily doesn't hate him. She's just unsure of him. Unsure of why he left, why he never reached out, why he let her mother carry the weight of a story that clearly shaped both of them. And Edward? He doesn't know how to answer those questions. Because the truth is, he doesn't have a perfect excuse. He was scared. Scared of breaking something fragile. Scared of not being enough. Scared of the very thing he now wishes he had fought for. And Lily can sense that. Her presence in the story becomes more than just emotional background. It becomes a mirror. She's the version of Vivian that Edward never got to see grow. The woman who might have been his daughter had fate twisted just slightly. In her, he sees both what he lost and what he might still be able to earn. But the tension doesn't end with Lily. The woman from Edward's present, Caroline, is still in the picture. She isn't the villain. She's intelligent, compassionate, and clearly cares about Edward's well-being. She's been at his side during his recent health scares, helping him manage his foundation work, standing by him during long hospital visits and even longer nights of worry. She didn't know about Vivian. Not really. Not the depth. Not the history. But now she does. Caroline doesn't lash out. She doesn't make scenes. She simply makes a choice. She steps back. For now. But the air is thick with the kind of silence that only comes when something unspoken sits between three people and no one knows what to say. Meanwhile, Vivian finds herself on unfamiliar ground. She's always been strong, always made her own way. She built her life brick by brick, without relying on a man to hold her up. But now, faced with Edward again, with the feelings she thought she buried, she starts to question what she really wants. Is this about closure? Or is it something more? And just as she begins to open her heart again, the past makes one final move. An envelope arrives at Vivian's door. No return address. Inside, an old photograph. Faded, folded, nearly torn. It's from that week, from the hotel suite. She and Edward sitting on the couch, laughing, unaware the camera is even there. And on the back, scribbled in Edward's handwriting, "I never stop thinking about this moment." Vivian stares at it for a long time. She doesn't cry. She doesn't smile. She just holds it close. Because it's not just a memory. It's a confession. And it changes everything. At the same time, Edward receives a phone call. His illness, which he once believed was manageable, has taken a more serious turn. It's not fatal, not yet, but it's aggressive. His doctors are urging him to begin treatment immediately, the kind that drains you, the kind that takes strength and support. He doesn't tell Vivian right away, not because he wants to protect her, but because he doesn't want pity. He wants their connection to be about now, not about weakness. But secrets have a way of finding light. And Vivian, who has spent years helping others spot what they can't see in themselves, begins to suspect. There's a moment, quiet, piercing, when she asks him, "Is there something you're not telling me?" He doesn't answer, not with words, but she knows. And in that moment, everything else falls away. The years, the pain, the other people, the fear. All that's left is the truth. She still loves him. But love alone won't be enough. As they begin to spend more time together, the cracks in their worlds start to show. Edward struggles with letting someone in. Vivian struggles with trusting that this time, he won't walk away. Lily is watching from the sidelines, unsure whether to cheer for this love story or protect her mother from it. And just when it seems like they might actually rebuild something, the past delivers one final blow. Caroline returns. Not to reclaim Edward, but to warn Vivian. She's found out that Edward, despite his wealth, has been quietly dissolving his businesses, pulling out of boards, selling properties, moving everything into trusts and charities, preparing for something. Caroline doesn't say the word, but Vivian knows Edward is preparing to say goodbye, and that changes everything. Vivian confronts him, not in anger, but in anguish. "You were planning to disappear again," she says, "only this time, without giving me the chance to stop you." Edward doesn't deny it. He says he wanted her to remember him strong, alive, whole. But Vivian, voice shaking, replies, "I don't need you to be whole. I need you to let me in." It's the most vulnerable moment in the entire script, and it marks the true turning point. Because finally, after 3 decades, 2 broken hearts, and a lifetime of what-ifs, Edward opens his arms and lets her in. Together, they begin something new. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Vivian stays. Lily softens. Edward begins treatment. They find laughter in old memories, hope in quiet mornings, strength in shared weakness. And through it all, the love story that once began with a business transaction becomes something far deeper. This time, it's not about rescue. It's about redemption. It's about returning, not to the past, but to the part of yourself that always believed in something more. Pretty Woman 2 is no longer about what could have been, it's about what still can be. Some stories don't end, they wait. Pretty Woman 2 isn't just a sequel, it's the answer to a love story paused in time. It's about growing older, facing regrets, and finding the courage to begin again. Vivian and Edward's journey reminds us that real love isn't perfect. It's patient, it's painful, and sometimes it takes a lifetime to return. But when it does, it's worth everything. As the curtain rises once more, fans around the world are finally getting the ending they've waited decades for. And maybe, just maybe, a new beginning too.